Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Christy Wilbert, Senior Vice President of Medicare Offerings at URL Insurance Group. And we have Samantha Robertson here from Aflac. She's going to be going all over all their ancillary products, which they do have a very big plethora and variety of them. So she's going to show you a lot today. But she will also reference some links that we have available for some more in-depth training on product-specific stuff. So I definitely recommend that you check that out. We will have it on our website. We did blast it out originally with the invitation, and we'll follow up with those as well. A lot of great information is going to be here for you today and then available after the fact. We are recording the webinar today, so it will be available on our webinar archive if you want to go back and watch it later. We realize this is a busy time of year, so watch it at your convenience. If you are live with us right now today, you can go ahead and open your chat box on the bottom right. There should be a blue button there. If you want to ask questions during the presentation, we'll make sure to get you some answers before the end here today. All right, and I'll turn it over to you, Samantha. Thank you for joining us.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Christy. Hello and good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. As Christy had mentioned before, we are going to go over the Aflac products that are available for you to sell and to offer your customers alongside your primary products there. As we go through, I will be going off camera just so we can focus on the content because, as Christy mentioned, it is a lot of content. Luckily, for those links that Christy had mentioned, please refer back to those as well for any more detailed information. What we're going to cover today is really just a high level of just kind of the perks of each of the plans and just some of the specifics, but to get into more of the actual benefit information and kind of the nuts and bolts of the nitty gritty, that information can be found in those links. Each of the links is usually around anywhere from 8 to 12 minutes long. So it's not going to be like an all day thing. You can start them, you can pause it to go through the content as needed. So please feel free to utilize those, but we will cover just the highlights of the 4 products that we'll be talking about today. Also, there is, as you see the option, there's a Q&A and some chat. So please feel free to put any questions that you do have in there. And towards the end, I will be happy to answer whatever questions that we may have regarding any of those. So we'll go ahead and get started with that. There we go. So hopefully everybody will see the screen there. What we're going to start with essentially is going to be our dental product, dental, vision, and hearing. I start with that one because it is not a supplemental plan or an ancillary type plan. With the dental, vision, and hearing, it is a network plan. So when people are talking or looking for dental insurance, typically what they want is going to be one of those plans where it will allow them to go get their teeth cleaned twice a year for free. And then it's going to help pay a certain percentage if they do need any type of dental care, such as a cavity filled or a tooth pulled, something like that. And that's exactly what this dental plan is. So with our dental plan, before we get into the actual plan options, it can be sold to anybody between the ages of 18 to 99, and it is guaranteed renewable for life. This is going to be the case with all of the Aflac plans. Just means that as long as they keep the policy or pay the premiums each month, they can keep the policy for as long as they live. They will have 3 different plan options to choose from, starting with a basic, which will start at around $20 per month, a core, and then an elite plan. So depending on which types of coverages they need, what their budget may be, there are 3 plan options for them to choose from. There are some waiting periods. None of them, there's no waiting period for preventative services. So that would be getting those teeth cleaned twice a year. No waiting period for that. 6 months for basic services, and then 9 to 12 months for major services, just based on which plan they choose from. It is going to be available in most states. We mentioned it is a network plan, and it is also a passive PPO. So really all that translates into is even though it is a network plan, they can go to any dentist that they choose, in network or out of network, with no impact to their coverage. So we do recommend that they try to go in network whenever possible, just because if they go out of network, there's a possibility they could be paying a higher percentage for certain services, or not a higher percentage, but a higher out of pocket. The percentage that the plan pays will stay the same. But out of network doesn't have that cost control feature as it does with an in-network dentist. And then the coverage options for all of the Aflac plans, you'll see this with each of the plans is going to be obviously individual, themselves and their spouse, single parent family, or two parent family coverage. But again, with the passive PPO, they can go to any dentist that they want, in network, out of network, and it's not going to impact their plan whatsoever. Any dentist that is currently considered in network with the dental networks, NovaNet, Dentamex, Zealous, Maverus, are automatically considered in network with the Aflac dental plan as well. So some of the dental plan features here are going to be with the three different plans. So first, if we're looking at just that basic plan, this is that one that's going to start at around $20 per month. There is no waiting period for the preventative care, which is those 2 dental exams or cleanings plus 1 set of x-rays per year. No waiting period. Those are covered at 100%. It also provides coverage for basic services. So that would be something like just a cavity filled or a simple extraction. After a 6-month waiting period, those basic services would be covered at 50%. Major services are not covered under the basic plan. The annual deductible, it does start at $75, but will decrease for the first 3 years. So the second year, it's going to go down to $50. Starting in the third year, they have the policy, it's $25 and will stay $25 for as long as they keep the policy. For the annual maximum, it also is going to increase in those first 3 years. So that first year, it's going to be $750 per person, but then it's going to go up to $1,000. Then in year 3, $1,250 per person. And that's where it will stay for as long as they keep the policy moving forward. So the basic plan, starting at around $20, just has those basic services after a 6-month waiting period, but it does include 2 cleanings and 1 set of x-rays per year. Going to the next price point, you're going to look at the core. The core also is going to have the same with preventative services, no waiting period, 100% covered. After a 6-month waiting period, basic services are covered at 50%. But then starting in the second year, the coverage for basic services does go up to 60%, right? And it's going to remain at 60 moving forward. Major services are covered. The major services would include things like crowns, dentures. It does not provide coverage for implants or orthodontics. After a 12-month waiting period, though, major services would be covered at 50%. The deductible is the same as it is with the basic, the same annual increase with the annual maximums. The annual maximums do start at a higher price point with the core plan. And then at the highest price point, you're going to have the elite. The elite, again, covers preventative services with no waiting period. Basic services are still going to have that 6-month waiting period. But with the basic services, the coverage after that waiting period starts at 60%. Then it jumps up to 70% in the second year, and then 80% starting in year 3 and beyond. So any type of basic service needed after year 3 is covered at 80%. Major services under the elite plan actually only has a 9-month waiting period. So we've lowered the waiting period for those major services, allowing for 30% coverage in those remaining 3 months of that first year. The second year, it is still the 50% coverage, but then starting in year 3, the coverage for major services does go up to 70%, and it would remain at 70 as long as they keep the policy. The deductible is the same. It will decrease in those first 3 years, and then the annual maximums also are going to increase, but they do start at a higher price point even than the other 2. So with the major services, those can be covered under the core or elite dental plan. However, with major services, it does include crowns, oral surgery, dentures. It does not provide coverage for dental implants or any type of orthodontics or braces. When we look at vision and hearing can be added if somebody purchases a core or elite dental plan. It will not allow you to add vision and hearing onto a basic dental plan. But if somebody does purchase the core or the elite, it will also allow you the option to include vision and hearing benefits along with it. Vision and hearing are going to come as a package deal, so they can't get just vision or just hearing. If they get one, they are going to be enrolling in both. The vision is administered through iMed. Right? So iMed is going to be the network for the vision. The hearing is administered through Nations Hearing. If they do purchase the vision and hearing alongside with it, if they purchase a core dental plan, then the vision insurance is one annual vision exam. There's a $10 copayment, but the rest of the charges are covered. And then they will have $150 every 24 months to use towards corrective lenses, whether that be in the form of contacts or eyeglasses. What they've done here, I really like the simplified approach. Some vision insurance, it looks like there's a lot more coverage, but they've done is they've broken down, like you have so much to go towards certain types of frames or so much to go towards contacts. With ours, it is just going to lump together, and they have $150 rolling every 24 months to use towards whatever corrective lenses they prefer. The hearing, if they purchase the core dental with the vision hearing, will allow for one annual hearing exam with no waiting period. Then there is a $500 a year allowance to use towards either the purchase of new hearing aids or the repair or maintenance of existing hearing aids. If they purchase an elite dental plan, basically it's the same thing, except instead of 150 towards corrective lenses for the vision, they get 250 every 24 months toward corrective lenses. And the waiting period for the hearing aid allowance is reduced down to 9 months instead of 12 months, which is that $500 a year towards either new hearing aids or the repair or maintenance of existing hearing aids. Right. So just to recap on the dental, orthodontics and implants are not covered under any of the plans. It is a core plan, so there really is no claims process for the policyholder. They will be mailed ID cards. That ID card is going to have all the information that the dentist needs to submit that claim, and then the money would be paid directly to the dentist. There is a no tooth or a toothless clause. We call it both because depending on the carriers, they're worded a little different. Essentially, what it means is that you want to make sure that whoever purchases a policy has at least one natural tooth in their mouth. So if somebody already does not have any natural teeth, we do not want to sell them a policy because none of the benefits would be payable to them. Also in the world of dental, some variation by carriers going to be when everything kind of resets. Some plans out there have all of the benefits resetting per calendar year, right? So they could purchase a policy now and then January 1, everything would reset for their deductible annual maximums. Ours is not based on a calendar year. It's based on policy year. So if somebody buys a policy, let's say effective November 1st, then the annual maximums, the annual deductibles, all of that would reset on November 1st of next year, right? So it is a policy year. Vision and hearing also, if they are included, they cannot be removed later without canceling the entire dental policy as a whole, which would in fact reset those waiting periods. Vision and hearing also cannot be added later to a dental plan without just having to take out a whole new policy, and that would also reset those waiting periods. So just want to make sure everybody was clear on that because a lot of times vision and hearing can be treated sometimes as like a rider, right? Where it could be added or removed later. With ours, that is not the case. It's actually part of the base or the core plan. So just know that vision and hearing, you can't add or remove later without resetting all of the dental waiting periods. Also, waiting periods that have been met with other carriers are not recognized by this plan either. You see that more so in a what's considered a takeover situation, usually through employer-sponsored plans, where yes, they may change dental carriers and they say, okay, well, if you've had dental insurance, we've got this new company coming in. If you already met the waiting periods, then they'll honor those. Unfortunately, as with a direct to consumer product, these plans are not designed or were not approved to do that. So there's no situation in which we would be able to waive any type of waiting period. So the waiting periods will always have to be met, even if they've had, similar coverage with other carriers. So just keep that in mind. And then we do request, we realize this won't always be the case, but we do recommend that they wait and schedule their appointments for at least, 10 to 14 days after they requested whatever they requested their effective date to be. That will just allow time for the application to be fully processed, for those ID cards to be mailed to them, and for them to have that information to take with them when they go to the dentist. Having that ID card in hand will just make the process for the dentist a lot easier. We understand that won't always be the case or be able to happen. Rest assured, their coverage will go into effect as of the policy effective date. But whenever possible, it does a lot of time make just for a smoother transition or a smoother claims process for the dentist if they do have that ID card in hand when they do go to the dentist. So just wanted to put that out there with the dental plans before we get into the actual ancillary plans, which will include our accident, cancer, and critical illness plans. So I don't know, were there any questions that we had so far just on the dental plan? Didn't.
Nope, I don't see any questions.
Gotcha. All right. Well, we will continue on into the ancillary products here. The first thing I'd like to do before we get too deep into the ancillary is really go into just the Aflac overview and how Aflac works, because I don't know everybody's comfort level or knowledge level with ancillary products or just supplemental or Aflac in general. But what I have found is making sure we understand just at high level how Aflac works is really vital, because once you understand that, then the products really become interchangeable at that point. And so because the process would be the same regardless of the actual product line or plan that was purchased. So we did mention there's going to be 3 products that we can offer. It's going to be the accident, the cancer, and then a critical illness plan. Each one of those are sold independently of each other. They can choose 1, 2, or all 3. And how they work is, and I typically start with the accident, and I'll spend a little bit more time on the accident just because it is the most universal type of plan out there, because accidents can happen to anybody. Plus, there's no medical underwriting with the accident. So it's a great plan really for everyone. So the accident really is going to cover any type of accident, and it could be a car accident, whether the person was a driver, a passenger, or a pedestrian. It's going to cover slip and fall type of accidents. It's going to cover burns. It's going to cover, fractures. Typically in the summer, I always say, the 4th of July, people have incidents with fireworks all the time that result in some type of injury. We're getting close to, the holiday season of Thanksgiving and Christmas. So somebody could have a mishap trying to hang, Christmas lights on their house, fall off a ladder. They could, have an incident with a fireplace or a fire pit in the fall. All of these types of incidents would be covered under an accident policy, as well as accidents that may happen at somebody's job. So it's a great plan for somebody who works in a very physical type of position. And I always think of electricians, plumbers, firemen, police. These are all physically active types of jobs. Even if they are injured on the job, the accident plan would cover those injuries itself. So we're going to use the accident policy as an example. So if somebody purchases the accident policy and they are injured in an accident, whether that be a car accident, an injury that occurred on the job, slip and fall, whatever, they're going to go and they're going to receive treatment as they normally would. Aflac does not even come into the picture at that point. So when they go get treatment, they are going to give the emergency room, the urgent care center, wherever they go to get that treatment, they're going to give them their primary or their major medical insurance, or the employer is going to give them their workers' comp information, or it's going to be Medicare. So whatever their primary insurance or payment method for the treatment is, that's who they give the provider, because that insurance pays the provider. Okay. So they're going to go receive their treatment as if Aflac doesn't exist. Okay. Once they've received that treatment and they are considered in like maybe a recovery phase, that could be, if it was something like a broken bone, right? Maybe they're done, with the exception of needing to go back and have a cast removed. It could be they're going to have a few, physical therapy follow-ups. But after that initial treatment has been given and they are like, okay, now they know what their path forward is, that is when they would be able to go online and submit a claim with Aflac. Now, I've had this question come up before about, well, how does Aflac know? What does this look like? How long does it take? So I'll break that down. Again, this would be the same process regardless of the product line. So in the event of this accident, once they've received that initial treatment, whether the treatment's all the way done or maybe they have a few follow-up visits, either way, they're going to go online and they're going to, and they already have access to their policy and account information online. That's done immediately with the applications, but they'll be able to log in and say they want to file a claim or submit a claim. It is going to ask them just a few. It's a very user-friendly process. It's going to ask the date of the accident, kind of what happened. May ask a few questions like if they were transported by ambulance, but then it's going to ask where did they receive treatment, right? The name of either the urgent care, the hospital, the doctor, whatever the doctor's name was. They're going to, and then if they have information such as discharge papers or any type of documentation, it will give them a list of that information that they can immediately upload if they have it. And then they hit submit. What then happens is Aflac does verify, all Aflac's going to do is verify the treatment, right? So the reason we ask for, hey, where did you receive treatment and the date, right? Part of one of the documents that they sign when they submit that claim online is that authorization to obtain information. So once we know where they received treatment and when, we can request or get those medical documents online. A lot of these databases we can immediately verify. And what we're looking for at that point is just, hey, what treatments did they get? Was this the result of an accident? We don't care who paid for it, right? We don't care if, the hospital or urgent care was paid by primary insurance or workers' comp or Medicare. We just need to verify the treatment that was received. We don't look at the cost. We don't look at how much it was, what they still may owe or anything like that. We just verify they did in fact receive the treatment. And then if they did receive that treatment, in this instance as the result of an accident, then whatever amount is in the policy for that treatment is what we would pay to that policy holder. So we can verify all of the treatments that they received. They can pull up their policy side by side and know almost to the dollar exactly how much they're going to get from Aflac. And then we direct deposit that money directly into their bank account, and they can use that money however they want to. So there could be instances where they still owe the provider a lot of money. Doesn't matter to Aflac. If they want to use that money to pay the provider, they absolutely can. There may be instances where they don't owe the provider anything, right? Maybe it was fully covered by workers' comp or by their primary insurance. The amount that Aflac would pay is not based off of that. So they would still get the exact same amount of money. And then whatever they want to use that money for is completely and totally up to them. If they do have outstanding medical expenses, they could use it for that. But they could also use the money to pay their rent, their mortgage, their car payments, credit cards, however they want to use that money. It's completely up to them. And so that same process would be the same if somebody were diagnosed with cancer and they had a cancer policy, right? Their major medical is going to, pay doctors, hospitals, those types of things. but Aflac's going to pay the individual directly for their treatment. And then with critical illness as well, if they are diagnosed with a heart attack, stroke, a covered critical illness, then Aflac's going to pay them directly based off that as well. So just want to I spend a little bit of time on that just to make sure everybody has a clear understanding of how Aflac works, why it's good regardless of the type of insurance that you have, because the amount that Aflac pays does not vary based off of any other type of insurance or what's covered or what's not, or out-of-pocket expenses. It's a set dollar amount for that treatment and that specific injury. So starting with the accident policy. The accident policy, as I said before, it is really our most universal type of policy, simply because accidents can happen to anybody. And so the accident policy can be sold to anybody between the ages of 18 to 75. That just means that they have to be between that age to purchase the policy. Nothing happens when somebody turns 76 if they already have a policy. So we don't increase their premiums. There's no reduction in benefits. So a 70-year-old could buy the policy and keep it for the next 30 years if they live that long, if they choose to. So they just have to be between the ages of 18 to 75 in order to buy a policy. Once they own the policy, they can keep it forever, as long as they pay those premiums. It is not age banded. So what that means is a 20-year-old is going to pay the exact same amount for an accident policy as a 70-year-old within that state. So there is some variation in the premium based off the state, but typically it's just going to be $2 to $3. So it's the same price for everyone. If they do choose to cover any children, children can be covered under the policy until the age of 26. So with the accident plan, they're going to have two plan options to choose from. The standard plan is going to start at around $25 per month. The elite plan will start at around $37 per month. With all of our plans, meaning with all of our products that have different plan options, all plans will cover the exact same treatments. It is just going to be the amount of payout, the amount the policy would actually pay. It's typically going to be higher for a lot of the treatments or a lot of conditions on the higher price plan. So an example would be, let's say, hospitalization. And this I'm working off memory here, so refer back to those links for the actual benefit amount specifics. But for example, let's say under the standard plan, if somebody's hospitalized because of an accident, the standard plan, which starts at around $25 per month, would pay them $350 for each day that they're in the hospital. Under the elite plan, which is around $37 per month, that would pay $500 for each day that they're in the hospital. So that's just an example of, it's going to have a higher price point, but a lot of the benefits are going to have higher payouts. But there's no treatment, there's no injury, there's nothing on the elite plan that does not also have a benefit under the standard, right? So it's just going to be the amount of payouts could be different with the different levels. The accident is, when I say it's the most universal, mainly because there are no medical questions on the application. So there's no reason anybody would be medically denied coverage for an accident policy. Typically, the only thing that would disqualify somebody for an accident policy is going to be if they've had a DUI in the last 5 years. But it doesn't matter what medical conditions they have, what medications they may be on. None of our plans ask things like height, weight. So really, as long as they haven't had a DUI in the last 5 years, they're going to be eligible for an accident policy. This makes it really good for individuals that may have certain diagnoses that could make them more accident prone. So I always look at individuals that have certain diagnoses such as Parkinson's disease or, MS. These are all conditions that can affect mobility, that can, make them a little bit more prone to, be in an accident. It's a great plan for those. Also, people could take medications that could make them a little bit more accident prone. Some of the side effects could be vertigo or dizziness. These are all things that could result in an injury, right? An accidental fall. It's medications that say do not operate heavy machinery type things. All great candidates for an accident policy. Also, as people age, right, as they get older, slip and falls are the number one reason for hospitalization among seniors. So, it's a great plan for those. If a 20-year-old takes a tumble down a flight of stairs, they'll probably hop up, maybe have a bruised ego, maybe a little bit of bruises, as opposed to, a 60 or 65-year-old. They take that same fall, it could result in broken bones, just a little bit more serious injury, probably a little bit more medical attention needed to that. It does have that 24/7 coverage. That is mentioned in here again because it would be great coverage for those individuals who work at blue collar jobs, any type of physical jobs, roofers, general contractors, construction, plumbers, police, firemen. If they are injured on the job, it would still provide coverage for that, even if they go down the medical or workers' comp route, which they absolutely should. But workers' comp typically just means that the employer insurance, workers' comp insurance, is going to pay for the medical bills. It may have some stipulations depending on their policy as far as wages, those types of things. But Aflac policies don't look at who's paying the bill and what's happening on that end. We just verify that they receive certain treatments because of an accident, and then we pay the policyholder directly based off of those treatments. So injuries that occur on the job absolutely would be covered. And then the coverage options will be the same that we saw with the dental. It'll be the same as we have for the other plans as well, as far as who they would like to have covered on their plans. So looking just to recap on the accident, the other thing to point out with the accident, there is no policy maximum, but there's also not a minimum payout. The reason we point that out, and I specifically call that out, is the fact that there are what are called lump sum accident policies on the market. Those are accident policies where they say, hey, if you're involved in an accident, then we'll pay you, $2,000 or $5,000. That is not how this particular accident policy works. So it's not considered a lump sum accident policy. There's no way for us to guarantee any type of minimum payout for an accident. While there's also no maximum, there is no minimum. So the amount that the plan would pay, the amount that they would receive, is solely based off of, the type of accident, the type of injury, and what their treatment was. We talked about the pricing. It is the same for everybody, 18 to 75. Nothing happens if they already have a policy at the age, of 75. So we're not going to increase their premiums due to age. We also don't increase their premiums due to the number of claims. If you sign up for a policy at the age of 20 for $20 a month, if you keep that policy for the next 80 years and file 1 million claims, it would still be $20 a month that you pay for the rest of your life. With underwriting, I would say there is no medical underwriting. Typically, the only thing that's going to make somebody ineligible for coverage is if they've had a DUI. It does say there's typically just 3 questions. There are a few states with, 1 or 2. That's going to be based upon the state. Those 3 questions, though, because a lot of people say, well, if it's only a DUI, what are the other questions? The DUI is going to be one question, right? Just making sure they haven't had a DUI in the last 5 years. The other 2, the next question is going to be around making sure they don't already have an accident policy with Aflac, right? Just making sure they don't have excessive coverage. The third question is making sure they understand that this should not be a replacement for their primary or major medical, right? So it's going to ask a replacement question, an excessive coverage question, and then the DUI question. So that's going to be, it's a very easy application process. We already talked about children can be covered up to the age of 26. And then for claims, they can file those online. And typically a claim can be processed within 4 to 7 business days. So it's not going to be like a month-long process. If somebody were to submit a claim today, there's a very high likelihood they're going to have that money or in their account by the end of the week. So it's a very quick claims process. So that's it with the accident. Again, refer back to those links for more information as far as the specific details on what the plans would pay, the optional riders, because there is a death benefit built in. There's an additional accidental death rider that can be added. Those specifics can be found in those training links. Going on to the cancer policy is available. The cancer plan does cover everything from the screening of cancer to a diagnosis, and then the treatment and then follow-up care. In all honesty, they're going to find there could be some similar accident policies. We'll talk about critical illness next. You'll find some similar policies out there on the market with those. You're not going to find a more comprehensive cancer plan on the market. The cancer policy was Aflac's kind of flagship product. It was what the company, it was the first product the company formed when Aflac itself was created. And because of that, we make sure that the cancer policy is typically the most comprehensive, providing the best coverage and benefits on the market today. That still holds true. With the cancer policy, it can be sold to anybody between the ages of 18 to 69 in most states. However, they can keep the policy for as long as they live once they have that policy before they're 69. Also, when it comes to coverages on here, on our cancer policies, this applies just to the cancer policies, but on our cancer policies, children are covered. You can cover the children on the policy until age 26, but also children can be included in coverage at absolutely no cost. And that's regardless of the number of children. So that's going to be one thing that sets this policy apart from any other on the market is children are covered at no cost on the accident policy. They are going to have 3 different plan options to choose from: a standard, plus, and elite. Same premises with the accident. All 3 plans will provide benefits for the exact same treatments. It is just obviously the standard, plus, and elite. The amount each plan would pay is going to be different. I know how insurance companies have to name their plans, right? You have red, white, blue, gold, silver, bronze. Ours is standard, plus, and elite. In my head, I think of it as small, medium, and large. Maybe I eat too much fast food, but if you get like a value meal at McDonald's or somewhere, you order a number 1 and they're going to say, what size do you want? Small, medium, and large. Regardless of the size, all 3 are going to include that, entree, fries, and a drink. It's just the amount of each of those. Same with these. All 3 are going to pay for the same treatments. It's just the amount that the plan would pay. So you're going to have 3 plan options. With cancer, there is going to be a 30-day waiting period. That 30-day waiting period starts on the policy effective date. So if somebody were to sign up for a policy effective October 15th, my advice to them would be don't go to the doctor before November 15th for anything. So the 30-day waiting period does start on the actual policy effective date. And then the coverage options are going to be the same here as well. So we talked about children are covered at no cost on the accident plans. In addition to children being covered at no cost, a lot of the benefits are increased or even doubled if it is a child that is diagnosed with cancer. An example of that would be one of the benefits under the plans is going to be what's called an initial diagnosis benefit. That is paid out just with the diagnosis of internal cancer before any of the treatments are paid out, before anything else. On the elite plan, that is $5,000, right? If somebody were to be diagnosed with internal cancer. On that same elite plan where a child could be covered at no cost, if it is a child that is diagnosed with internal cancer, then the payout just for the diagnosis is doubled to $10,000. And then, they would receive additional benefits for whatever their treatment plan looked like. Something like hospitalization. If the child is hospitalized for the treatment, then it's a higher payout as well for things like that hospitalization. It would also include treatment in certain with Aflac, we do a lot of fundraising and philanthropy work for CHOA, or Children's Hospital of Atlanta. They have children's hospitals all over the country. I moved down here from Philadelphia. There was CHOP, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. Also, you have organizations like St. Jude. Treatment in those hospitals for cancer would also be payable. Cancer plans are going to have that 30-day waiting period. Same with the accident. There is no minimum amount that somebody would receive. The treatment and then the actual diagnosis is going to determine the amount the policy would actually pay out. But there is no policy maximum on there. I've been with Aflac for 22 years. It is not uncommon for a lot of our cancer policies to pay well into the six figures, just based off of the type of cancer somebody has and what their treatment looks like. Any diagnosis or treatment outside of the US is not covered. So if somebody wanted to go to Canada or Mexico, maybe they thought the treatment was cheaper, or if they wanted to go to Europe somewhere, maybe there was an experimental treatment they wanted to try, they absolutely could do that, but they would not be able to file those treatments under the cancer policy. But if they get treatment at a U.S. government hospital, it would be covered regardless as to where that hospital was located. Another good point to make with that would be if, let's say, a retired military veteran purchases a cancer policy and they get diagnosed with cancer, but they decide to get treatment at a VA hospital. Typically, those treatments should really have little to no out-of-pocket expenses for that retired military veteran, but that is considered a government hospital, so they would still be able to file those treatments under the cancer policy and get the full benefits for them as well. There is that initial diagnosis benefit we had talked about. Under the Elite plan, it's $5,000. That initial diagnosis benefit is payable, but it's only payable for an internal cancer diagnosis. Skin cancer is covered, but there are separate benefits in the plan specifically for skin cancer. But that initial diagnosis is payable just for an internal cancer diagnosis. The last and not least, that second bulletin here is going to address people that have previously had cancer that are interested in purchasing a cancer policy now. So these rules only apply to those individuals that previously have had a cancer diagnosis. If you're talking to somebody and they are a cancer survivor and they are interested in getting a cancer policy, typically because they understand just how draining, both financially and emotionally, a cancer diagnosis and treatment can be. So they really, really understand the value of this plan. There's going to be 3 pieces of criteria that have to be met. Okay. So only if they previously have had cancer. If they have, the first question is going to be, are they cancer treatment free for at least 10 years? Okay. If it has not been 10 years since their last cancer treatment, they're not going to be eligible. So cancer treatment free for at least 10 years. If they've met that, then the next criteria is going to be, have they had a cancer screening within the last 12 months? They have to have had a cancer screening within the last 12 months if they previously had a cancer diagnosis. And then the third thing is going to be, they cannot be on any type of preventative hormonal therapy in the last 12 months. So only for individuals who previously had cancer, they cannot be on preventative hormonal therapy within the last 12 months. They have to have had a cancer screening within the last 12 months, and they must be cancer treatment free for at least 10 years. The only exception to that is going to be cancer treatment free for 10 years. There's one exception, and it's very specific. I typically don't go into state exceptions because they can be kind of all over and so many. But for this one, there is only one state exception, and it is very specific. And so I go ahead and we'll share that with you. And it is for residents of the state of Florida who have had breast cancer. So it is very specific to Florida residents who previously had breast cancer. They only need to be cancer treatment free for 2 years and not 10. They still have to meet the other two pieces of criteria though. So breast cancer in Florida, they only have to be cancer treatment free for 2 years, but they still have to have had a negative cancer screening within the last 12 months, and they cannot be on any type of preventative hormonal therapy for the last 12 months. But that is the only exception to that rule for those individuals that previously had cancer. Right. And I'm going to stop there just for a second to see. I didn't see any questions in there. All right.
Nope, I don't see any either.
Perfect. I know it's a lot of information, so I wanted to pause in there in between. And then last but not least is going to be our lump sum critical illness policy. With our lump sum critical illness policy, it can be offered or sold to those individuals between 18 to 69 in most states. Same rules here are going to be dependent children can be covered to the age of 26. When it comes to the lump sum critical illness, there are going to be 4 different face amounts for somebody to choose from. They can choose 10, 15, 20, or 25,000. The 10,000 does start at around $10 per month, and then it's going to go up from there. It is age banded, so obviously this $10,000 at $10 a month with somebody in a lower tier. I believe though, even if you get up to like the 65 to 69 age, it's for the 10,000. I believe it's still less than $20 per month. But you got 10, 15, 20, and 25,000. What I wanted to point out here is with the underwriting with critical illness. Obviously, there's going to be some underwriting questions, just making sure they haven't recently had like a heart attack or a stroke. The $10,000 face amount has less restrictive underwriting than the higher amounts. So what that means is the underwriting question. So the application is identical for 15, 20, and 25, right? It is literal copy and paste. So 15, 20, 25 ask the exact same questions, but 10,000 does not ask as many underwriting questions. So to give you some examples, this is not an exhaustive list by any means, but just as an example, if somebody has COPD, if somebody has diabetes, if somebody is taking blood pressure medication because of hypertension, right? Just those are 3 fairly common conditions or scenarios people may be in, right? Those 3 items would disqualify somebody for a $15,000, $20,000, or $25,000 amount, right? So it's going to ask about those 3 conditions. If they say yes, it'll say, unfortunately, you're not eligible, to purchase this policy. So that was, again, diabetes, COPD, or blood pressure medications, right? That would disqualify them from 15, 20, or 25. Those 3 conditions are not asked about at the $10,000 level. So if you know somebody has those conditions, or maybe, that probably health-wise they have some serious stuff going on, you may just want to start at the $10,000. Or if maybe you're unaware of that and somebody is interested in a 15, 20, or 25 and you start the application, if you are when you are going through the application, as you answer the questions on there, if it comes back and says, hey, they're ineligible, is very easy. What I would recommend doing is just going back and changing it to a $10,000 application, because they could still qualify at the $10,000 level. But 15, 20, and 25, it's the exact same. So if they're eligible for a higher amount, it really just comes down to the price point, right, and the amount of coverage they want. But if they're not eligible for a higher amount, I would look at possibly covering them at $10,000. There is an option to include cancer as a critical illness. A few things with that. One is going to be if they do include cancer as a covered critical illness, it would treat the cancer as it would, heart attack or a stroke. But the cancer will still have that 30-day waiting period. It does not extend the 30-day waiting period to the other critical illnesses. But the way to think of it is all cancer coverage, regardless as to if it's in a standalone cancer policy or included in a critical illness, all cancer coverage is going to have a 30-day waiting period. The other thing to keep in mind is with our, I don't know why I didn't make up the rules. I just like to explain it to you. With our critical illness, so with this particular plan, before it will give you a quote, it does ask if the person uses any type of tobacco or nicotine product, right? If the answer is yes, they can still take out a critical illness plan. It's just going to be at a higher premium, right? So it's tobacco versus non-tobacco type rates or nicotine. We do not ask about nicotine or tobacco usage on the cancer application. Don't know why, but we don't. So if you know somebody does use tobacco or nicotine, they're interested in cancer, it is always going to be better to give them a standalone cancer plan because they're going to be paying significantly lower premiums than they would by including cancer and a critical illness, because they're already going to be paying higher premium for the critical illness in general. So we don't want to extend that higher premium onto their cancer coverage. If somebody did in fact want cancer coverage in both places, they could do that. It's not going to be cheap, but they could get a critical illness that includes cancer and a standalone cancer policy. If they wanted to have cancer coverage in both, they absolutely can. They would receive full benefits of, the cancer diagnosis and treatment under both policies as well. So it would be a very significant payout, but it would be costly to do so. But to just know those are the options when it comes to cancer coverage. They can get a standalone cancer plan. They can add cancer as a covered critical illness. If they want to do both, they can. But if somebody does use tobacco or nicotine, I would recommend just always doing a standalone cancer plan, simply because the cancer does not ask about tobacco or nicotine usage. With our critical illness plans, it is a little different from the accident and the standalone cancer in the effect that I mentioned the accident and the cancer is going to pay you based off of the treatment, right? So you could look to say, hey, I had this treatment, and pretty much calculate almost to the dollar exactly what Aflac's going to pay you. With the lump sum critical illness, it is paid based off the diagnosis, right? But in order for the policy to be paid out, the diagnosis has to be one of the critical illnesses that you see listed there. There's a lot of illnesses that our people consider critical. They could absolutely be correct in that. However, our plan is only going to cover the illnesses that are listed on the screen there. So the actual diagnosis has to be heart attack, cardiac arrest, end-stage renal failure, something along those nature. Cancer would also have to be an internal cancer diagnosis. If they are diagnosed with having that, then they would receive whatever face amount they had signed up for, whether it's the $10, $15, $20, or $25,000 amount. There are other critical illness policies on the market today, like lump sum critical illness policies. I will point out what is different about our plan than almost every other carrier, including Aflac's own critical illness plan that's sold through employers, right? Through our worksite plan. And that is going to be the fact that the initial diagnosis is the full face amount for each covered person. If you're familiar with lump sum critical illness plans on the market, if you read the fine print, most of them say, hey, if you're going to provide coverage for your spouse or your children, then whatever amount they sign up for is typically just payable for the primary insured. And then the spouse or children are only covered at a certain percentage, typically 50% for the spouse, could be 50 or 25% for the children, whatever that percentage is. With this plan, each covered person, the first time they were to have a covered critical illness or have a heart attack or a stroke, the full face amount would be paid out, right? So if somebody got the $20,000 plan, it'd be $20,000 if it's the spouse that has a heart attack. And then if, a year later it was a child or the primary insured that had a heart attack or a stroke or something different, it'd be $20,000 for them. So that's going to be one of the things that would set this lump sum critical illness apart from most others on the market. The plan does have basically an automatic increasing benefit built in. What that means is that each year that they have the policy, until they have a critical illness, the face amount will increase by $500 a year for a maximum of 10 years or up to $5,000 or whenever it's paid out. So if somebody buys a critical illness policy and they have it for 3 years before they have a critical illness happen, and they would get an extra $1,500 on top of whatever face amount they had signed up for. And that's just built in. So there's no extra cost for that. There's also a subsequent or a reoccurring event benefit on the policy. That is half of whatever the original face amount is. So let's say that somebody gets a $10,000 plan, right? The $10,000 is only paid out once per person, right? Ever. But the subsequent or reoccurring event, as long as it's more than 6 months after a first event, and it could be the same type of event or a different type of event, then they would get $5,000 for each one of those. And there's no maximum on the subsequent or recurring event benefit, right? So if I have an individual policy, the first time I had a heart attack, I would get the $10,000. If 8 months later I had a second heart attack or let's say a stroke, I would get $5,000. And then if a year later I had another stroke, it would be $5,000. As long as it's at least 6 months or 180 days from the previous event, each recurring event is half of whatever the original face amount was. There is no waiting period for the critical illness. Unless cancer is included, then the cancer is going to have that 30-day waiting period. There is a pre-existing clause, though, that any pre-existing condition is not covered unless it's more than 12 months after the effective date. But if somebody does not have any pre-existing conditions, such as they've never had a heart attack or a stroke, there is no waiting period. So that pre-existing clause does only apply to any type of pre-existing condition, which just says that if it is due to a pre-existing condition, then it has to happen at least 12 months after the actual effective date. So those are the critical illness plans that we have there. And so I will pause to see if we had any questions, comments, concerns, need clarification on anything, but that's going to be it really for all of the Aflac plans. As we had mentioned before, those links do go into a lot more product specific, such as benefit details and those types of things. But I'm happy to answer whatever questions you may have now about anything Aflac.
Thank you so much, Samantha. I feel like that was very thorough and a great job. I even learned some things on here, so I very much appreciate having you on. I do not see any questions, so if anybody does think of something, you can reach out to Samantha or myself. You can have everything go through me, actually, and we'll get you some answers. But thanks for joining us today. I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Happy Monday. Have a great day.